Private property is indispensable as an economic base and precondition for forming a government fit for freedom. I use this unfamiliar expression to emphasize that no government is, or can be, committed to freedom. Only people can be. Government, by its very nature, has a vested interest in enlarging its freedom of action, thereby necessarily reducing the freedom of individuals. At the same time, the right to private property, as a political-economic concept, is not a sufficient foundation for a government serving the needs and meriting the loyalty of free and responsible persons. It may be worth remembering here that Adam Smith, generally regarded as the father of free market capitalism, was not an economist. There was no such thing in the 18th century. He was a professor of moral philosophy. As such, his brand of economics made no attempt to be value-free. Today, professional economists and observers of the economic scene bear in their efforts to make the study of these human affairs into a value-free social science. What, then, is the moral merit of the free market? What is good about it, besides its being an efficient mechanism for producing and delivering goods and services? The answer is that the free market is good because it encourages social cooperation, production and trade, and discourages force and fraud exploitation of the many by a few with the power to coerce, and because it is a legal moral order that places the value of the person as an individual above that of his value as a member of the community. It is implicit in the idea of the free market that persons who want to enjoy its benefits must assume responsibility, and be held responsible, for their actions, that they look to the principle of caveat emptor, not the paternalistic state, for protection from the risks inherent in the exercise of freedom, and that among the risks with which they must live are those associated with drugs and medical treatments. In short, the fundamental precepts of moral philosophy and political economics cannot be separated. They are symbiotic, the one dependent on the other. It island, illegitimate, Mises warned, to regard the economic as a definite sphere of human action which can be sharply delimited from other spheres of action. The economic principle applies to all human action. If we are willing to use our political-economic vocabulary precisely and take its terms seriously, we must conclude that just as the Constitution guarantees us the right to worship whatever gods we choose and read whatever books we choose, so it also guarantees us the right to use whatever drugs we choose. Mises's observation about the characteristic conflict of the 20th century, which, with welfare statism in mind, he offered at its beginning, remains true toward its end and applies with special force to the drug problem in the 16th and 17th centuries. Religion was the main issue in European political controversies. In the 18th and 19th centuries in Europe as well as in America, the paramount question was representative government versus royal absolutism. Today it is the market economy versus socialism. Mises never ceased emphasizing that our bloody century is characterized by a struggle between two diametrically opposite types of economic systems: command economies controlled by the state, exemplified by socialism communism, versus free market economies regulated by the supply and demand of individual producers and consumers, exemplified by capitalism classical liberalism. States based on command economies are inherently despotic, a few superiors issuing orders, and many subordinates obeying them. States based on market economies are inherently democratic, individuals deciding what to produce, sell, and buy and at what prices, producers and consumers alike being free to engage or refrain from engaging in market transactions.